There's a dirty word that no one in the music industry likes to talk about. I didn't talk about it for years and I've been ashamed about it, but it's finally time for me to talk about it, wrap my hands around it, understand it. And that dirty word is money. And if you think about it, as musicians, we're conditioned to be poor. You tell somebody that you're a musician for a living, a lot of times they'll ask you, oh, do you have a real job? To imply that musicians don't make money or shouldn't make money. And I probably bought into that in some way. I took pride in being a starving artist, and not having money or not being able to understand or manage it really impacted my career, really impacted my life. So this year, I started working to understand it, and I want to share some of the things I've started learning along the way. So today I'm going to break down a simple budgeting framework, and then I'm going to readjust that for music. Because a career in music is very different than other typical jobs. We don't have a regular paycheck. Sometimes things are irregular. We have spikes in our earning levels. And because of that, I just figured, well, all this financial literacy garbage doesn't apply to me. And that didn't really serve me. So now I'm working to understand that. And the first thing I'm working with is this rule, the 50-30-20 rule. It's a budgeting method that splits your income into 3 different categories. You have 50% for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings or debt repayment. And this method was designed to help prioritize financial stability without sacrificing enjoyment or long-term planning. So let's break down each category. Your needs. 50% of your budget goes to things like your rent or your mortgage, food, utilities, transportation, basic gear maintenance that you need to do your job. And as musicians, this obviously includes must needs like strings, sticks, chords. Now let's break down 30% to wants, non-essentials. Things like fun, things like dining out, things like alcohol, things like travel unrelated to work, or just leisure. And finally, and I always laughed at this, savings. 20% of your income should go towards saving for future, such as retirement or for emergency, and towards debt repayment, or if you don't have any debt, into investing. So this makes sense for most gainfully employed people. But that's not us. We're musicians. We go from gig to gig, and regardless of if you're in the studio, if you're on tour, if you're in town, things can be very unpredictable. So how do we adapt? So my number one tip is figure out your average income. And if you don't know, this might be a good time for you to start tracking what you're making. And earnings can vary wildly from year to year, month to month, even week to week. Ideally, you would like 6 to 12 months of an average to look at what you're making. And after you have that average number, go to prioritizing your needs first. And this is especially handy in months like this, January, February, March, otherwise known as slow season here in Nashville. During these months, you just want to cover essentials and contribute a small amount to savings. Wants, they can wait for the higher income months. So speaking of high income months, use those to build a buffer. Set extra cash aside from your gigs or your sessions or your royalties to cover expenses for those lean months like we're in now. Think of this as your safety net. You also want to set aside some funds for big expenses. Plan for predictable costs like taxes, gear repairs, union dues, professional memberships. For me, I like to have a high yield savings account, which I put this money into. And a lot of that is for taxes. So that money that I'm setting aside to pay taxes or memberships or dues, that's gaining interest while I'm waiting to send that money in. So let's talk about an example. So let's say in 1 month you make a good $10,000 from a good series of gigs or on a tour or from a royalty check. So that's $5,000 towards your essentials, $3,000 towards your wants, $2,000 towards savings. All right, so how do you go about executing this though? Well, here are some things I've been trying out lately. I've been working on automating my savings. I'm setting up automatic transfers each month, even if it's a small amount. I'm putting those into savings, investments, and to retirement. So I'm consistently building for my future. 2, another big one, track every dollar. I know it's not fun, Totally worth it though. Think about using tools like Mint or You Need a Budget, even just creating a spreadsheet. Something is better than nothing. If you don't do this, try doing it today. Start now. And tracking really helps you stay aware of your spending, especially when your income amount suddenly shifts. And that happens quite frequently in the business. Number 3, separate your personal and your professional accounts. So open up a dedicated account. It could be a credit card, it could be a debit account. Have that set aside specifically for professional purposes. Think about that as income from your gigs coming in, and if you need to invest in some gear, some income going out from that. And over time, you can start paying yourself a consistent salary to help create that predictability. Number 4, save for taxes. Please do this. You don't want to get caught with your pants down. So if you're a self-employed musician, you're responsible for your own taxes. A good rule of thumb, set aside 25 to 30% of each payment to avoid any big surprises in the future. 5, the emergency fund. Aim for 3 to 6 months of living expenses to cover dry spells or to cover emergencies. Lastly, 6, diversify your income stream. Some people like to teach. That's not my thing. There's nothing wrong with it. I like to have digital products online available for sale. I like to try to make royalties or try to have some form of passive income like advertisement from YouTube videos. And really, this is just a starting point, a jumping off point. That's where I'm at because I'm finally learning some fiscal literacy and I'm sharing my journey with other people out there. The 50-30-20 rule is flexible, which is super important for musicians because we work in an industry that is constantly changing and is irregular. But just because of that, we can still work within it. We just have to understand how and why. So again, the number 1 tips, prioritize needs. Save during high income months, build a buffer. And you know what? All this could be overwhelming. In fact, I think a few months ago, I had a friend of mine say, you should have 3 to 6 months savings for emergency funds. And I laughed because I said, that would be great. But that's not happening in my world. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And you know what? That's changing now. I may not have everything figured out today or tomorrow, but even if I just do one of these things and put it into action, I am that much closer to having some financial stability, which allows for me to have more fulfillment in my career, more enjoyment, and allows me to try a few new things that I really want to do. And I'd also like to personally thank my friend Rachel at Life's Jam. She's a financial coach and she's been helping me get on this horse, and she works specifically with people in the music industry. So if you're interested in working with Rachel, why don't you the link's going to be up there, and shoot her a line, tell her I sent you. She's great. And I hope that gives you some actionable steps so that you can start being kind to yourself. Because yes, and learning how to manage it, it's just really like balancing a math equation. And if you can do that, you're being much kinder to yourself and you're creating a better future. After all, this is what we want, right? Thanks for watching. Drop me a line if you have any questions, and I'll see you on the next video.